Hi, I'm Tavis Smiley.
And I'm Compton Mayor Emma Sharif.
You have no doubt been hearing promos and expert conversations on our various weekday shows and downloading details at KBLA1580.com about our climate justice campaign, which is now in full effect.
The city of Compton is pleased to partner with KBLA Talk 1580 to celebrate Earth Day 2024 as we serve, share, and help our city shine.
And KBLA Talk 1580 is just as excited to join the city of Compton as we broadcast live and bring our KBLA delegation with us to help clean and beautify our community, and you are invited to join us.
Come meet us on Saturday, April the 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton as we fan out to clean up our city.
The first 50 KBLA listeners to hit our website at KBLA1580.com will receive a free KBLA tee when you join us on Saturday morning, April 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton. Now, no show, no shirt, but sign up at KBLA1580.com right now to help us clean up Compton as part of Earth Day 2024.
We will see you on Saturday, April the 20th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in the city of Compton to do our part for Earth Day 2024.
We are KBLA Talk 1580, caring about the climate, caring about the community, cleaning up Compton. Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today in our second hour.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
56 years ago today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. In hour two, we will commemorate the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who has written extensively about Dr. King. I'm sure Dr. Dyson will also be anxious to talk about a number of cultural, social, and political issues during that hour, including Beyonce's Cowboy Carter. Michael Eric Dyson today in our second hour. And speaking of country music, in our third hour, after a century of whitewashing, is country music finally reckoning with its relationship to black folks? DePaul University professor Francesca Royster joins us to celebrate black country music, which is also the title of her award-winning text. But in this first hour, two more conversations on the B side of this hour. Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine, tells us why Silicon Valley reactionaries love RFK Jr., the title of his recent piece in The Nation magazine. RFK Jr.'s independent campaign for president announced earlier this week, and we discussed it on this program, that it has the signatures to qualify for the ballot in North Carolina. Make that North Carolina the swing state. Not good news for Team Biden. We'll talk about that on the B side of hour 3. But in this first hour today, we commence. That's the B side of this hour. I'm jumping ahead of myself. That's the B side, that conversation, the B side of this hour. We commence today's show, having said that, talking politics with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, the chief national political affairs analyst for KBLA Talk 1580, my hometown station here in L.A., where Dr. Quartey is also host of his own daily show called A More Perfect Union. Dr. Quartey, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Tavis?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. You know me, man. I'm just pushing through, powering through, and always honored to be in conversation with you. It is hard to know where to begin because there's so much news today. I think I want to do this. Let me just give a rundown of the things I hope to cover with you in these 30 minutes, and when we come forward, we'll let you jump straight away into it. Let me link a few things. First of all, regarding the Middle East. That story continues to develop. So there was a piece that just came out in the New York Times that Biden being outraged by what's happening in the Middle East. That's his word. He's outraged. But is he willing to use America's leverage with Israel? There are people asking serious questions about whether or not and when, in fact, he will move beyond the rhetoric and start to use our leverage in this unending crisis. Connected to that, there's a story out today that the White House invited Muslim community leaders to dinner celebrating Ramadan. And guess what happened? A whole bunch of them declined the president's invitation to the White House. Now, I've been invited to the White House more times than I can count. It always takes a little bit of nerve to turn the president down for an invitation to the White House, but a whole lot of Muslim leaders did that when invited to celebrate Ramadan. There's also a story out today that Jill Biden, the First Lady, has privately encouraged the president, urged him to stop the war. And so the White House is downplaying today and denying that there's any difference between their two positions. But the story's out that the First Lady is encouraging the president to do his part to help end this war and not just continue with the rhetoric. That's just at the top of my list. There's other stuff to cover. I'm glad I've got Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey right now on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Call Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. Visit jpmorganchase.com/racial equity and get the tools to help reach your financial goals.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drum.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, y'all to give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
All right, Dr. Quartey, let's jump right in here and make the most of the time that we have here. So this week, the White House canceled, as you know, a planned Ramadan dinner after many Muslim American leaders refused to attend that gathering as the Biden administration indicates its plans to continue arming Israel, never mind the rhetoric. And so on Tuesday, a scaled-back meeting was held with Muslim American community figures, and that meeting itself was met with protests. There was a doctor, a Palestinian American emergency room physician in that meeting, who handed the president a letter from an 8-year-old orphaned girl, a Palestinian girl, and the letter simply read, "I beg you, President Biden, stop them from entering Rafah." This physician handed that letter to President Biden and then turned out and walked out of the room, left the White House. Again, that's a bold move, but the president is hearing it from a lot of sources, a lot of different places and spaces, including, we are told, from the First Lady, who's encouraging him to do more to stop this war. Your thoughts?
I mean, Tavis, this is an increasing challenge for the president abroad and at home. Abroad, we know that the strike that killed a group of aid workers in Gaza, has really got a lot of people's attention at home and abroad. The Biden administration shows no sign that it's considering conditioning military aid to Israel as a consequence. And so the question is, well, what is the consequence? What's the consequence for operating outside of international norms, for operating outside of international law? The Biden administration, President Biden himself, has said that Israel is not doing enough to protect humanitarian aid workers. And so the question then is, well, what is the United States prepared to do abroad? Meanwhile, back at home, just this week, we had primary elections in places like Wisconsin, where the movement to protest President Biden at the primary ballot box in response to his handling of the war in Gaza exceeded its own expectations. More than 90% of the votes counted the uninstructed option on the Democratic presidential primary ballot. It garnered more than 47,000 votes. That's according to the Associated Press. It's just over 8% of the Democratic presidential primary vote counted so far. I know they're still counting votes there. And so this is a problem. This is a problem that the president cannot ignore. And, it seems to many that the president is coming off, or his core team is coming off, as a little tone deaf in terms of taking some action. We understand that, the geopolitics in the region are challenging. If we were to stop sending bombs to Israel, well, what happens if there is a sudden attack from Iran or one of the neighboring countries there, right? And so it's not just about Israel and Gaza, but it's about the region. But this president, this White House, needs to level with the American people and take the American people on the journey, because if not, there are a lot of folks that fear that this movement to protest Biden at the primary box could cost him the election in November.
Yeah. We are a nation, for better or worse, that loves gossip. Let's just be honest about it. We love hearing these sort of interesting stories, particularly if they're stories that come from pillow talk. And I use the phrase pillow talk respectfully, given that we're talking about the president and the first lady. But this story out now that the first lady has been encouraging him to do more to stop the war. Just because you're a couple doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. And she has her own mind and she has agency. And they've been together for a lot of years. So I can imagine this ain't the first time they've disagreed on something. But when a story like this breaks in the news that the president is getting advice from his wife, from the first lady, to do something different than what he's already doing, you read those kinds of stories when they come out how?
I read those stories as somebody leaked that, if it's true, to signal to the American people that there are voices inside the White House that are highly influential that hear them clearly. I mean, Tavis, just a few weeks ago when I was in L.A., the First Lady attended the Human Rights Campaign dinner that I had a chance to attend, and there were protesters that interrupted her speech. When the protesters were moved out of the room, she went on to sort of talk about when she and the president first met, and she sort of painted a picture of somebody, who was more of a hippie and anti-war and, was down with the women's rights movement. Those were Dr. Joe Biden's politics before she met our now president, Joe Biden. And so I'm not surprised if that is true, given what she shared at that HRC dinner. And the question is, how effective will she be, and other voices that are saying, Mr. President, you got to do something. You can't just, berate Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel, when something goes wrong. If there is no consequence, I think there are some that may rightfully believe that this will continue.
Yeah. Let me pivot ever so gently, because I think these things are connected. Because the president, there's a poll out on the one hand that suggests that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in 6 of 7 swing states. We're going to talk on the backside of this hour with Jeet Heer from The Nation magazine about his piece out now in The Nation called Why Silicon Valley Reactionaries Love RFK Jr. Why do I raise that? Because news came earlier this week, as I mentioned earlier, that RFK Jr.'s campaign has announced they've qualified for the ballot with signatures they need in North Carolina, one of those swing states. So again, there's a poll out that suggests that Donald Trump at this moment is leading Joe Biden in 6 of those 7 swing states. Michigan, of course, would be one of those, and that's what we connect that obviously to this issue in the Middle East because of the significant population of Muslim Americans in the state of Michigan. Joe Biden only won that state by 3 points the last time. It was close then. He's going to spend a lot of time, I predict, between now and November, going back and forth to the state of Michigan to see if he can turn the tide on this particular story. That said, the poll on the one end suggests that Trump is leading him again in 6 of 7 swing states. But there's another story out today, a big story, with Simon Rosenberg, who is really the only pollster that I can recall who in 2022 said that there isn't going to be a big red wave. He was very clear about that and very public. There will be no red wave. Everybody was predicting, as you recall, on Nii-Quartelai, a red wave in those midterm elections. He's the one pollster that stood out and said it is not going to happen. And lo and behold, Simon Rosenberg was right. It did not happen. Big interview out with him today where he's saying that people should calm down, that Joe Biden is going to win this election. He lays out all the reasons why he believes that the president is going to win this election. And in this interview, by the way, this is a Washington Post, New York Times piece out today. But in this piece, he says that he sees Gaza as an issue, the war that is, an issue for the president to manage. But I don't see it as a threat to his reelection. Those are his words. It's an issue to manage, but he doesn't see it as a threat to his reelection. How would you respond to those comments from Simon Rosenberg, who did call this thing right in 2022?
I would respond to that by reminding our listeners that President Biden came out of retirement to run for president in 2020, pledging to restore the soul of the nation. That was a clarion call to moral leadership, bringing some moral leadership back to the Oval Office, restoring some dignity to the office of the White House. I think there are a number of voters that may not be all that motivated to support the president, in part because they don't see that stark moral leadership on what has become, one of the most glaring moral issues of our time, the conflict between Israel and Gaza. And so it's off-brand, for the president to not be asserting some moral leadership, on, what is, one of the major humanitarian crises and military conflicts in the world right now that America's a part of. And so, will President Biden sort of squeak by in November? It's absolutely possible, but is he making his reelection harder than it needs to be? That's also quite possible.
Yep. There are a number of reasons, since I teed this up, let me take the next step. There are a number of reasons why Simon Rosenberg in this piece today suggests that he believes that Joe Biden will, in fact, win this election, and we should all calm down about Armageddon heading our way come November. These are just a few of the reasons. One, he argues that Donald Trump is a much weaker candidate this time around than he was when he beat Hillary. He's a much weaker candidate for a variety of reasons. I think you take that point. Secondly, he points to all the data in the primary season that we're still in. Frankly, it ain't quite over yet, even though both Biden and Trump have secured the delegates they need to be the presumptive nominees of their party. We're not quite there yet. But in the primaries that have already happened, the data is clear that Donald Trump has underperformed. Yes, he's won, but he's underperforming, secondly, in all these primaries. Number three, to the point you sort of mentioned a moment ago, he argues the president's got a strong case to make. He has done well as president. He's stewarded the economy, brought this country back from the brink, restored our respect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is a strong case to make, and as this campaign starts to get into high gear, the president will make that case, and the American people will hear it and respond. And fourthly, again, there are more than these arguments, but these are the four that jump out at me right quick. The president, as you know, is outraising Donald Trump and the Republican Party like crazy. They raised all that money, $25 million in one night in New York the other night when he, the president, and former presidents Obama and Clinton were on stage together. That's a lot of money for one night. But the Democrats, which is usually not the case, they are far outraising Republicans in this campaign. So there are just four of the reasons that Simon Rosenberg says that indicate to him that Joe Biden is, in fact, in November going to pull this off. Never mind all the polls and all the surveys and all the stories. And as David Plouffe would say, all the Democratic bedwetting that we are engaging in right now. Simon Rosenberg says, as my grandmother would say, let your heart lay down. Your response.
Let your heart
lay down.
Lay down. Oh, my goodness. Well, I don't think it's going to be easy for people to let their heart lay down because it still feels like with all of that, all those reasons that support the reelection of President Biden and Vice President Harris, it still feels to so many as if they are making their reelection bid harder than it needs to be. Uninspiring young people to get behind them enthusiastically, and so they've got some work to do. And it's work that's not for the faint of heart. Like I said, it is quite possible that President Biden and Vice President Harris win re-election. All right. The question is by what margin? The question is, how do they inspire more enthusiasm among the Biden-Harris coalition that they assembled in 2020? And, more to put it frankly, how do they get out of their own way? Because there seems to be a few examples that are pulling focus from an otherwise pretty strong record to run on. Look, everything is not perfect. Everyone's not feeling that breathing room that President Biden so often talks about. There's plenty of work to do. But as we do this look back and look forward, I think there are a number of folks, both Democrat and Republican, that would love to be able to run on the record that the president and Democrats have as a progress report to say, hey, reelect us for 4 more years.
Yep. And finally here, I asked this question of others because it's becoming increasingly a critical question. I've not asked it of you on this program, so let me ask it of you now, given that you are the chief national political affairs analyst for my home station in L.A. You cover these issues better than anybody I know. And the question is simply how you are reading the tea leaves on these independent candidates. I think I can say this. I haven't cleared it yet, but I'm going to say it anyway. I received a phone call. I was on a call with my friend, Dr. Cornel West, in the last 24 hours, and he has made it clear to me that he has now chosen his running mate. He has now selected who his running mate is going to be as vice president, and we're just trying to work out some particulars, but I think that announcement will be made on this program next week. I think his very first interview, making that announcement of who his running mate will be, will happen on this program next week. He may even be in L.A. in studio, but that announcement is forthcoming, I'm told, sometime next week, and I expect it to be made on this program. If we can work out those details, we shall see. But I raise that because Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., has already chosen his running mate. It is a Silicon Valley executive. We'll talk about that again in just about 3 minutes from now on the backside of this hour. But the fact that RFK is qualified for the ballot in North Carolina, and Cornel West tells me he expects to qualify for the ballot in 35 to 40 states by the time this is all said and done. This third-party candidate issue is going to resonate significantly this time around. In 2 minutes, how significantly do you expect it to, in fact, resonate this election?
I think the one thing that's not clear is how many of the uncommitted voters are willing to commit to independent candidates, right? And so they're saying, hey, we're withholding our vote from Biden until he changes course on principally Gaza, but it could be a number of other issues because we can't assume that these uncommitted voters are single-issue voters. And so it's not clear to me how many of them might be interested in Dr. West or Jill Stein or RFK Jr. But that is a consideration. It's got to be a consideration out there. Last I checked, the Emerson survey said that another 6% of folks that they were undecided, while independent candidates, Cornel West and Green Party candidate Jill Stein, each got 1% in that poll. And so,
right.
Will adding a VP pick, make a big difference? Possibly, but there's still a long way. It's a long way, Tavis, until the convention's a long way till November.
Nii-Quartelai Quartey and I will be together with other colleagues in Chicago this summer for the Democratic National Convention. I look forward to hanging out with him for the week in my favorite city of Chicago. And just a final footnote, I made this point on this program maybe yesterday or earlier this week. Experts tell us, Nii-Quartelai, as you well know, that this election will ultimately be decided by about 3 million people in 6 swing states, about 3 million people, rather, in these 6 swing states. And so I don't know if all the rest of our votes are actually wasted for Trump or Biden. If it comes down to 3 million people in 6 swing states, we shall see. But for now, I thank Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, the chief national political affairs analyst from my home station in L.A., KBLA Talk 1580, and host of his own program on that station, A More Perfect Union, heard weekdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Dr. Quartey, good to have you on, my friend. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you, Tavis.
We'll talk to Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine, about why these Silicon Valley reactionaries love RFK Jr. when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
We thank you for joining us on this Thursday. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be talking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today about the war in Gaza. Today's phone call comes days after 7 humanitarian aid workers were killed by an Israeli attack in the Gaza Strip. Biden said that he was outraged by the incident and urged Israel to do more to protect civilians as Israeli forces wage war on Hamas. The National Civil Rights Museum is set to host an annual remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today. The event will be held at the Lorraine Motel site in Memphis, Tennessee, where he was assassinated in 1968. This year is the 56th anniversary of the death of the African-American civil rights leader. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Why are people saying hew yeah to Jackson Hewitt? When you switch to Jackson Hewitt, they will beat what you paid last year on tax prep, even if you filed online. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com. After a breakout 2023 season, Bazooka is getting the bobblehead treatment on Saturday, April 13th at 6:10 p.m. against the Padres. First 40,000 fans take home the first ever Brusar Getterall bobblehead presented by Yamaba Resort and Casino. Visit Dodgers.com/promotion.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers capped a 5-1 Eastern road trip with a 5-point win at Washington. Anthony Davis had 35 points and 18 rebounds. LeBron dropped 25 with 9 assists. The Lakers are 8-1 in their last 9 games, but they haven't been able to move out of the 9th spot in the Western Conference. The teams ahead of them, Dallas, Phoenix, and Sacramento, keep winning as well. With 5 games left in the regular season, moving up from the 9th spot is important. If the Lakers are 9th at the end of the season, they will have to win 2 games in the play-in round to make the playoffs. The Clippers are back in action tonight at Crypto.com. They play the Denver Nuggets. Tip-off at 7 on TNT. Kawhi Leonard's status for tonight's game is uncertain. He's got a sore right knee. Big props to Angels' new manager, Ron Washington. The Angels have won 4 straight after sweeping Miami. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis.
Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Sounds different. This is Tavis Smiley.
Conversation now with Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine, on his piece called Why Silicon Valley Reactionaries Love RFK Jr. The title is fascinating, got my attention, so I want to talk to Jeet about it. As I mentioned earlier this week, and you may well know, RFK Jr.'s independent campaign for president announced this week that it does, in fact, have the signatures to qualify for the ballot in North Carolina, a swing state. That is not good news for Team Biden. We just had a conversation with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey about this poll that suggests that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in 6 of 7 swing states. So we shall see what happens over the next few months as we head toward November. But for now, RFK Jr. is gaining some traction. He's gaining some steam, however one defines that. Jeet Heer, good to have you back on this program. How are you today, sir?
Well, it's always great to be on. I'm looking forward to talking about this.
It's good to have you on. Let me just make the most of the few minutes that we have here. So jump straight in and tell me about this piece.
Sure. It's ripping off the fact that, RFK Jr. chose Nicole Shanahan, who's very young, 38, and has no political experience. What she does have is a lot of money because she had been married to one of the founders of Google, and so she's probably a billionaire, and RFK Jr. needs money to get on these ballots. Like, it is very hard to actually get on ballots as a independent candidate, and he needs to announce his VP pick to get on ballots as well. So she can provide both a name and the money. I think she's not an isolated figure. She actually belongs to this cohort of people, very rich people in Silicon Valley that are increasingly becoming a reactionary force in American politics. And some of these people your listeners will have known, like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. Others are a little bit more obscure. But I think one of the common trajectories that they have is, especially the newer ones, they were sort of radicalized by the sort of COVID era and by the so-called, defund war on the police or whatever, the criminal justice reform, and they really flexed their muscles in San Francisco. It was these people, their money that got the sort of recall vote for Chesa Boudin to get him removed as district attorney.
Yeah, we just had Chesa Boudin on this program last week, in fact, talking about that. There's a documentary out about him now called Beyond Bars. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. You can find it. Just Google Beyond Bars for this amazing doc about the life and story and times of Chesa Boudin and what happened as he got elected as one of those, any number of DAs across the country who were progressive. There was a period a few years ago we were electing progressive DAs, and no sooner than they had elected him in San Francisco, they started to try to recall him, and they were successful in recalling this progressive DA in San Francisco named Chesa Boudin. If you didn't hear our conversation, go to our any of our platforms and check out the podcast of that conversation. But it's an amazing documentary called Beyond Bars. A few questions, though, back to the subject at the moment, RFK Jr. And these reactionaries who apparently love him in Silicon Valley. First of all, to his running mate. You mentioned she's young. She's 38 years old, was married to one of the founders of Google, so she's quite wealthy herself. I suspect that if money is at the epicenter of his decision-making regarding why he chose her, that can be seen as a strategically brilliant move, that he has a running mate with a lot of money to help fund his campaign. So strategically, say nothing of her having no political experience, strategically, how would you regard his decision to choose her?
Yeah, I think if his immediate goal is to get on ballots, she's probably the best person. I mean, she does have, the money. And further, thanks to decisions like Citizens United, she can spend all the money she wants, right? Like, it's not, you can spend your own money on your campaigns. And I think you see a lot of that in California, right? You're familiar with very rich people spending their own money. How it plays out, I don't know. I mean, I think she has liabilities. And I think RFK Jr. has liabilities. The more people know about it, I think his anti-vaxxer past, a lot of people don't know about that. I mean, I think if he polls well because people see the name, like Robert Kennedy, a great American hero, nephew of John Kennedy, beloved president. And so they think this guy's he's like a Democrat, but he's much younger than Biden. And but I think, you know, like where he actually stands is a problem. And I think she herself will become a problem because, you know, Shanahan shares a lot of these anti-vaxxer kind of sentiments. In the speech where she announces her decision to go along, be a running mate, you know, she emphasized a lot of things like, you know, like electromagnetic stuff, cell phones, you know, wants to have like, you know, and it's all presented as like, well, I'm just asking questions, right? But I mean, if that's the rub of your politics, I think like a lot of mainstream people are going to be turned off by that.
Yep. I was about to ask you if there's anything more dangerous than a reactionary with $1 billion. Whether we're talking RFK's running mate, RFK Jr.'s running mate, or Elon Musk, is there anything more dangerous than a reactionary with a lot of money, with $1 billion? I don't know. But let me just ask you this particular question, which is how dangerous they are. I don't know if there's anything more dangerous, but how dangerous are these reactionary billionaires who have the money to advance the causes and now the campaigns that they care about?
Oh, I mean, it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, I think that is really the epicenter of right-wing politics. I mean, I think there's a lot of media myths like, well, it's the white working class and whatnot, right? But like what actually, like, you know, what's the thing that keeps the lights on and is the force? And, you know, you just have to look at the Supreme Court. I mean, like, basically, like, it was like, you know, Harlan Crow and Peter Singer and a bunch of other billionaires who basically bought the Supreme Court. And they were able to overturn, you know, Roe v. Wade. And they were able to, like, do, like, you know, push back against union rights and do all sorts of things. So it's a tremendous problem. And, you know, I mean, I think the Democrats, you know, because they have their own billionaires, the mainstream Democratic politicians aren't willing to say this is a problem. But this is I think, you know, this is the great threat to American democracy, right? Like, of course, you know, they'll do, you know, all their sort of racist, homophobic, sexist demagoguery to rile up the base. But what is the actual animating force behind this? It's like, you know, rich guys who don't want to pay taxes and they don't want to like be regulated.
Yep. Speaking of regulated, when we come forward, I want to come to this point of Citizens United you raised earlier. I have a very smart audience, so they know that when Citizens United became the law, it basically meant you can spend all the money you want to spend on campaigns, particularly if it's your own money. But now we're really starting to see, as Jeet lays out, I think quite eloquently and quite brilliantly a moment ago, we're starting to see the real-world impacts of that. These billionaires like Elon Musk and now RFK Jr.'s running mate and Peter Thiel and Harlan Crow, he ran the list. There are others. But they're now using their money to do all kinds of things, to buy elections, to buy media platforms and advance narratives that are false in a variety of ways, to buy the U.S. Supreme Court. We're starting to see the response and the impact of Citizens United passed some years ago, but now it's coming into greater focus. I want to talk to Jeet about whether or not, now that we see a little more transparently, now that we can see the forest for the trees, whether or not we should rethink this and what that would look like, whether or not there's any attempt, any effort, I should say, in the Congress to push back on Citizens United now that we see the damage that it is doing. We'll talk about that part when we come forward with Jeet Heer of The Nation magazine on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce.
This election year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the place for politics, unapologetically progressive politics. And we've got two of the best and brightest to help you cut through all the noise. Weekdays at 1 p.m., it's A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. And at 4 p.m., it's Areva Martin in Real Time. He's the university professor and distinguished member of the White House Correspondents Association. She's a best-selling author and Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer. And they are both here every day to help guide you through all the this year, because you know it's going to get deep. Get your politics on weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. with A More Perfect Union, hosted by Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey and Areva Martin in Real Time, only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Jeet Heer of The Nation magazine coming your way right about now. He's National Affairs Correspondent for that brilliant publication. His piece now is called Why Silicon Valley Reactionaries Love RFK Jr. You probably heard that RFK Jr. has picked a running mate. She's 38 years old. She's was married to one of the founders of Google, has a whole lot of money. And it takes a lot of money to get on these ballots in these states. And again, that's why RFK Jr. has now qualified for the ballot in North Carolina, one of these 6 or 7 very important swing states. So it's going to be a long, hot summer and a chilly fall between now and November as these independent candidates for president start to gain some momentum in swing states, no less. Another question about that in just a second. But first, Jeet, your thoughts on Citizens United. It's been some time now. And as the years have rolled on, we see more and more in real time the real world impact of Citizens United. And I don't know that if there's any consideration in Congress that you're tracking about how we address this issue years after having made a huge mistake, or the Supreme Court, for that matter, making a huge mistake.
I mean, it's because it's the court. I mean, that is the kind of problem. But I just want to lay out just how big of a problem this is. I mean,
Sure.
We've seen, there's at least 2 justices and possibly more that are, basically, outright owned by billionaires. Like Clarence Thomas, and it certainly receives a huge amount of, benefit and largesse from people whose cases he's deciding before the courts. But even beyond that, I mean, just look at Trump. He took his Truth Social thing to Wall Street and it got a huge infusion of money. And but Truth Social is not actually worth that much. But it's an easy way to you could buy a potential future president, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only Jared Kushner's deals with the Saudi government. So I mean, basically, I think Citizens United, at the root of it, it has created a totally corrupt political system where money rules. Now, how do you change that? I mean, to me, unfortunately, I think Congress could decide something, but the courts, they will have the final say, and their decision. And I want to remind people what their decision was. The decision was that money is speech, right? That money has First Amendment protection. But if you think about it, what that means is that a person who has $1 billion, has infinitely more speech power than somebody than an ordinary person that's living by paycheck to paycheck. So I mean, I seriously think the Democrats have to get very serious, and there's some talk about this. I think Biden himself is shifting about court reform, about expanding the courts, doing what it takes if they have the Senate and if Biden is reelected, and basically getting a court that can take a look at this and take a look at the Dobbs decision and a lot of these other decisions and come to a more traditional understanding. I mean, the fact is until Citizens United, which is very recent, money was not speech in America. There was a sense that you want to have free speech equality, get as many people have a voice as possible, and that's different from allowing a billionaire to dominate over the rest of society.
Nope, I couldn't agree more. And as you were talking, Jeet, I was just thinking about what we all know, that elections have consequences. Every time I have one of these conversations about what the Supreme Court has done, my skin crawls because I just get reminded once again that elections do, in fact, have consequences. Hold on to that as we come forward in our remaining moments with Jeet Heer of The Nation magazine on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed. Just a few minutes left here with Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine. His piece out right now is called Why Silicon Valley Reactionaries Love RFK Jr. And this conversation is important and critical and will be increasingly so as we move through this year where these independent candidates are starting to gain some traction. Speaking of independent candidates, let me just read one of the many messages, Jeet, that I've been receiving during the course of this conversation. Tavis, Biden is not viewed as a viable candidate, and the polls clearly indicate this, at least to me. The majority of people do not think that Biden will last 4 more years. Given that, the real choice Democrats are forcing us to make is between Kamala and Trump. Trust that Frank Luntz will drop a campaign line on this before the election. Frank Luntz, of course, being a pollster. That's my commentary added there. Because people feel compelled to vote, independent candidates, including Professor West and RFK, are going to continue to gain momentum because the alternatives for many appear to be worse. Your thoughts, Jeet Heer?
Yeah, no, I think it's undeniable that, like, you know, if Biden, people have real concerns about Biden. They're concerns about his age. But having said that, like, you know, I think a Kamala-Trump matchup, like, a lot of people are down on Kamala Harris. But, I mean, I think, you know, she's a formidable figure in her own right. And I think ultimately you're going to have to come down to, like, party positions. Like, you know, I think that, you know, Biden has had his flaws. I've been very critical of his handling of, you know, Israel and the Palestinians. But, you know, like on a whole range of issues, like, you know, like people are going to have to look like what Biden stands for and what the Democrats stand for and what the Republicans stand for.
Yeah.
You know, going forward, I actually do think, you know, I don't know if Biden's going to be able to run the most energetic campaign, but he'll have like a host of surrogates. People like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Gretchen Whitmer, and who will be able to, like, you know, take Barack Obama, be able to take the message out there. And I think if it becomes a stark contrast between what the Democrats want and what the Republicans want, then I think Biden has a real shot at this. So, yeah, I mean, having said that, I really hope, you know, he changes course on Israel-Palestine and, you know, gets Israel to wrap this war up quickly, because I think that's an anchor that's weighing him down.
Yep, I will close on this note. I've said this before a few weeks back, and may have been one of the first persons to say it publicly, but I will say it again. I believe that Kamala Harris is the new Willie Horton. You've been around for a while. You understand that Willie Horton reference. Frank Luntz and these other Republican strategists and consultants. We saw this already on the night of the State of the Union address with that commercial that they ran with Kamala laughing and that giggle that she has. My point is simply this. Between now and November, you're going to see as many Kamala Harris commercials as you see commercials attacking Joe Biden. I'm talking about commercials from the right. They're going to keep putting Kamala Harris in your face and reminding the American people that if Joe Biden does in fact win and dies in office, this is who becomes president. They're going to Willie Horton Kamala Harris from now all the way through November. Mark my word. I digress for now. Jeet Heer is National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine. His piece is called Why Silicon Valley Reactionaries Love RFK Jr. Jeet Heer, good to have you back on this program, my friend. All the best to you, sir.
Always great talking to you.
Good to have you on the program. In our next hour, the M to the E to the D, Michael Eric Dyson, as we commemorate today the 56th anniversary, 56 years ago, believe it or not, that they assassinated Dr. King on that balcony in Memphis. And knowing Dyson as I do, we'll cover a whole lot of other stuff as well. Michael Eric Dyson for the hour when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
We thank you for joining us on this Thursday. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be talking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today about the war in Gaza. Today's phone call comes days after 7 humanitarian aid workers were killed by an Israeli attack in the Gaza Strip. Biden said that he was outraged by the incident and urged Israel to do more to protect civilians as Israeli forces wage war on Hamas. The National Civil Rights Museum is set to host an annual remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today. The event will be held at the Lorraine Motel site in Memphis, Tennessee, where he was assassinated in 1968. This year is the 56th anniversary of the death of the African-American civil rights leader. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
After a breakout 2023 season, Bazooka is getting the ball